Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing a review of Doctor Who, the Juggernauts. Yeah, it's one of those Big Finish audios I finally got around to buying, even though it's been on my radar for some time, and that mainly because, you know, it's the Sixth Doctor, not that, sorry, wrong thing, Davros and the Daleks even, and that, but then again, the Sixth Doctor is surprisingly good in Big Finish audios. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not obviously the biggest fan of the Sixth Doctor and or Colin Baker's portrayal of the Doctor in the TV show, but that doesn't mean that I don't like him. You know, I think what baffles me is the idea that people like being negative about what they supposedly like on the internet, you know, and about, like, you know, this whole sort of stuff, yeah, in regards to sort of Doctor Who or Star Wars or whatever else, you know, it seems to be popular to be negative about stuff. And just because I don't talk about a lot about, say, the 60s or 80s or David Tennant era and or maybe the RTD era a lot in my videos, it's predominantly either just because I never usually get round to those episodes, or, you know, sort of watch them a lot or anymore or as much as I used to, or because I don't have that many episodes of them, maybe, you know, like the 60s Who stuff, I only have a handful of those episodes. 80s Who, I have quite a few more than, say, of the 60s Who, but the thing is, not all of those stories I like, and the thing is, again, I'd rather go over the episodes that are the cliches of, oh my god, this story, Genesis, or Brain of Mobius, or Inferno, or Day of the Daleks, or whatever else, you know, are amazing, or whatever, rather than just sort of go out of my way to find really shit stories that I don't like, whether it's from the 60s, 70s, 80s, or any of the modern series of Who. I'd rather just try and talk positive about Doctor Who, because I like Doctor Who. I'd go so far to say I love Doctor Who, do you know what I mean? So, you know, you can be positive and like things and still be critical of them and be, yeah, critical, I think, has been, or being critical about something is now, I think, because of the internet, is being popularised and or twisted in a way that it means that it's being negative about a certain thing, which I don't think it is. But anyway, mini rant aside, at the front you've got Davros, you've got the Dalek, and you've got Mechanoid, and all of the Juggernauts, Mel, Sixth Doctor, lovely Sixth Doctor action figure there, as well. Big Finish there, then you've got the writer person there, full cast audio drama, CD thing, Doctor Who, the Juggernauts, 65 in the monthly range, Big Finish logo there, Sixth Doctor picture there. Then on the back you've got the bio and that of it, it's 120 minutes runtime. You've got the TARDIS thing, background and whatnot, and all the legal guff. Then on the inside you've got more Sixth Doctor stories, both the discs, both the discs just about, as well as the writer's notes. In chronological order, I want to say that this episode's set after the events of Revelation of the Daleks, and I only say that because this isn't a spoiler, but Davros has a mechanical hand. Now, spoiler alert, but for anyone who hasn't seen Revelation of the Daleks, Davros gets his hand blown off, or shot off even, so I'm presuming in that respect, yeah, it's set after the events of Revelation of the Daleks, and yeah, so in that respect, for everything that's good about this, I feel like there is a fairly equal or substantial negative, or not even negative, but just sort of thing that sort of didn't land quite where it was meant to land for me personally. And again, if you get annoyed by my personal taste in episodes of Doctor Who or whatnot, you know, fine, that's fine. You know, if you really get annoyed, unsubscribe. If you know, just, I don't know, like, I'm just being honest. Obviously, as I say, like, Colin Baker isn't my favourite Doctor, but here he actually is really good. I think what is unfortunate for Colin, Sylvester, and especially Paul McGann as well, or just all three of those Doctors, none of them, no pun intended, considering Peter was the cricket-based Doctor, but no pun intended, but I think Peter Davison was the last Doctor to get a good run at the bat, and I think, and I think the thing is, like, I think a lot of the production-y stuff falls, or seeps into a lot of their televised era, especially Collins, and I think that's what falls flat. Now, maybe it is that, maybe it's because this is non-visual, but yeah, I don't know, like, Colin here really works for me, and I don't know, it's cool. He's quite, sort of snippy and a bit, well, there's nice banter, for lack of a better term, and back and forth between the Daleks and Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor, which I really like in sort of part 1, and that. Now, on a personal level, I did listen to part 1 and 2, then me and my mum went into town, and then I listened to part 3 and 4, so if I seem to go over part 3 and 4 a lot more than, say, that of part 1 and 2, that's why. I think the juggling act between the Mechanoids and the Daleks is very tough, and I think it was, as well executed as it could have been. I think, it's pretty intense. The Juggernauts or the Mechanoids, I think, have been in Doctor Who before with a William Hartnell story, but as I said previously, I don't really have a lot of his stories, so I don't really have an affiliation and or sort of emotional attachment or any real sort of attachment to them as a fan, so I was fine with Davros referring to them as the Juggernauts, even though the only thing that bothered me was that there was no real explanation other than, oh, they're called the Juggernauts. And then there's a bit where Davros is like, but Doctor, why are they called the Mechanoids when you last saw them? And if you last saw them, what were they like then? Or something like that. But that didn't really go anywhere for me. Or it didn't really go anywhere in the narrative of the story, which I thought was a bit odd. Really where this episode shines for me is that it's a character study of Davros as a character, and the sort of dual wielding duality between both the Sixth Doctor and all the Doctor in general and Davros, and also Mel mirrors quite a bit of the Doctor, i.e., what he did on Genesis of the Daleks, I think, and Mel's character's a bit, for the most part, she's like straight down the middle, sort of just a computer scientist, which I'm fine with. She's really charming, delightful, down to earth, if anything, like a classic series version of Rose, which is very odd to say, but with like a super brain at like coding, very odd. And I really liked Bonnie Langford's sort of performance here. But what was really weird though is that towards the latter end, without spoiling anything, she kind of feels like totally different to me, but then again she does react to it in a human way. But then again, you could argue the thing that she does towards the latter end was based on human impulse, and humans are very sort of sporadic and chaotic and that when they are filled with a lot of emotion and whatnot. So I think maybe I could write that off as that, maybe. The Sixth Doctor takes this interesting stance in the story of like sort of being more like a Time Lord, really, which is odd because the Doctor's always, in my head, more of a renegade and a rebel and this sort of cosmic hobo and just sort of larking around the TARDIS and traipsing his long scarf or whatever else he's wearing and whatnot, depending on the incarnation around the TARDIS, and just being quite, just unobtainable in terms of authority and that, The Daleks are okay here. There is a bit of a personality trait of one of them being quite stuttery, which I quite liked, made for one of them to have a bit more of a personality. There are a lot of plot twists in this story. However, the first and last sort of bits of the whole story, so the beginning of part 1 and the latter end of part 4, really, 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 really go too quickly for me and are really too fast-paced, even. Whereas the rest of the story is really sort of slow-paced and is very much about the characters and not even world-building, really. It's just this sort of, it's almost like a play, like literally, like, it puts the definition in audio play here, and Davros isn't nothing is quite what it seems. Let me just say that in this story, there is a lot of betrayal and lying and manipulating and that, which you would expect. That isn't really a spoiler because, you know, you would expect that hopefully going in, or hopefully if you're a hardcore enough Doctor Who fan, you would expect that going into a story with Davros, the likes of Davros, the Daleks, the Mechanoids, and that, you know. So yeah, this just feels like such a organic, no pun intended, and or, you know, wink wink, nudge nudge, organic evolution and or sort of, yeah, organic evolution of like Revelation of the Daleks. There's quite a lot of not only the hand thing, but just generally quite a few nods or just organic sort of connections from that story. So, but the way this story ends is I'm very curious as to canonically where the hell the stories go in the canonical timeline. Like, what the hell would be the next story from this? As I say, there's quite a bit of humour in this, or a bit more humour and a bit more sort of banter, for lack of a better term, again, between the Sixth Doctor, the Daleks, the Sixth Doctor and Mel, which is nice. I see humour being interjected very rarely or not that much in Big Finish audios. They are a lot more darker, a lot more intense, which I'm fine with if it weren't for the fact that majority of their output is just dark, intense, grueling sort of listens, which bum me out, really. You know, back to back, if you listen to like 3 of them, it would just make you very upset, probably. You know, but then with the new series, it's like with Matt Smith's era, say, as an example, it's too, you know, fairy tale, so too convenient, too fluffy, too just for kids. Like, it's finding that balance, I think, you know. You can sometimes tell an intense and serious story, but without having everything, you know, be blown up or people having their heads severed, or, do you know what I mean? Like, and that. But I think, as I say, this story is very much like Genesis of the Daleks as well, like, which might turn some people off me saying that, because a lot of people think that that's an overrated story. Yeah, I can see where they're coming from, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that lots of people like it and appreciate it. But I think there is quite a lot. There is a handful of references to Genesis without it going way too overboard, which is a rarity, really. And I think the Sixth Doctor is reminded of his actions in Genesis, but there are a lot of callbacks to Davros before Genesis, you know. And just generally, again, it is very much a character study of Davros. So if you're a fan of Davros, if you're a fan of the Daleks, maybe not. Don't pick this one up, but if you're a fan of Davros, definitely pick this one up. Mechanoids, again, I can't really say because I don't have any real prior knowledge to them as an adversary and or enemy of the Doctor, so, you know, I can't really say anything as to whether or not they're, you know, well done here or whatnot, but again, there are plot twists that involve them. Again, I think the Doctor here does take this role of trying to be this sort of person who can see the sort of web of time, for lack of a better term, and wants the most, you know, sort of positive outcome for everyone, or as good a outcome as for everyone as possible. Although he does come across quite, not arrogant, but quite harshly sort of aggressive towards Davros. And if anything, I quite honestly sort of sympathised with Davros quite a bit in this story. And that, but, you know, later on, you know, after listening to this, I can kind of see why Davros maybe goes down the path that he does in Terra Firma or something, you know, and that, because there is even a little line of Colin Baker's Doctor saying, you know, Davros, you're even more now Dalek than you were before, than we last met, and Davros sees that as an insult, because he's not quite, you know, he wants rid of the Daleks, basically, and he doesn't like them at this point anymore, and that, and yet, yeah, the Sixth Doctor is like, well, yeah, but they're your creations, they're your mess, sort of type thing, I guess. There's a lot of deaths, quite a lot of deaths, which is always great, I guess, if you're a fan of the Daleks killing people, which I am. You know, but I think there's quite a bit of other sort of more gruesome stuff as well, more gruesome things than, say, death in this story. And I think the plus side to it being a Big Finish audio is that, as grim as a lot of this is, you can censor it yourself, you know? Say if someone got stabbed in the neck in a Big Finish audio story, you could then censor it as in if you didn't particularly like the idea of them having blood trickling out of their neck, then you wouldn't have to see that, because that's what you imagine. But if you're fine with that, then you could also picture that, you know? So it's sort of up for interpretation, which is great, and that. But, as I say, the first bit of this story is way too fast paced, the end's a bit too fast paced, and that, and I don't know, it tries to do, I think it tries to be both terra firma as well as sort of Curse of Davros, with the action and that, but also the story beats and some of the more sort of classic Hugh elements of sort of terra firma, but with the action and the fast pacedness of Curse of Davros, and doesn't quite land quite right, but I would still give it an 8 out of 10 because I really enjoyed it, and I think Colin brought it up for me, actually, as did Bonnie Langford, actually. She was really good in this, as was Terry Malloy, to be honest. He was great, and that, because again, everything in this story doesn't quite look like what it's supposed to be, is all I would say to anyone going into the story. Nothing is quite what it seems, even. 8 out of 10 from me. Thanks for watching. Comment, rate, and subscribe.